This shouldn't exist. A fighter jet-looking aircraft that flies insanely fast, and somehow almost anyone can legally fly it. It breaks every rule you think aviation follows. And the truth behind it is even more surprising. At first, nothing about this aircraft makes sense, because when you hear ultralight, you probably imagine something small, slow, maybe even a little awkward in the air. That's what most people expect. And honestly, that expectation has been true for decades. But then, you see this thing. Sharp nose, aggressive lines, a cockpit that looks like it belongs in a military trainer, and suddenly, that entire idea of what an ultralight is just disappears. It doesn't look recreational. It doesn't look basic. If anything, it looks fast even when it's standing still. And then your brain does this weird double take. Because the more you look at it, the more it feels like you're staring at a miniature fighter jet. The tandem seating, the proportions, the stance on the runway, everything about it screams performance, not simplicity, not entry-level flying. And this is where it gets confusing, because this is still classified as an ultralight aircraft. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Something that looks like it belongs on a military airbase is sitting in the same category as the simplest flying machines out there. And naturally, one question starts forming in your head. How? Because if it looks like this, there's no way it flies like a typical ultralight. But the real shock isn't how it looks. It's what happens when it actually gets into the air. So now the question changes. If it already breaks expectations on the ground, what happens when it starts flying? And this is where things start to feel a little unreal. Because once this aircraft leaves the ground, it completely stops behaving like anything you'd expect from an ultralight. The speed alone is enough to make people pause. It doesn't just cruise, it moves. Fast enough that, in your head, you automatically start comparing it to much larger aircraft. But it's not just speed, it's how efficiently it does everything. It can cruise for hours, cover distances that most small personal aircraft would struggle to match, and somehow still maintain control at low speeds when it needs to land. That balance is not normal. Usually, aircraft make trade-offs. You want speed? You lose efficiency. You want range? You sacrifice performance. But this thing doesn't seem to follow that rule. And that's exactly why people in aviation can't stop talking about it. Because it's doing something that shouldn't really be possible in this category. It's stepping into territory that belongs to high-performance sport aircraft, while still wearing the label of an ultralight. Now just think about that for a second. If something performs at this level, if it flies this fast, this efficiently, this smoothly, then why isn't it classified as a regular aircraft? Why doesn't it require the same level of training, the same strict rules, the same barriers? So if it performs like a high-end aircraft, what's stopping it from being treated like one? Because the answer to that changes everything. Wait, you're watching right now but not subscribed to the channel. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button so we can move on with the video. You did? Okay, cool. Now back to the video. Here's where the story takes a turn. And honestly, this is the part most people don't expect. Because the reason this aircraft is even allowed to exist in this category has nothing to do with how it looks, or even how fast it flies. It comes down to something much simpler: how it's classified. In places like the UK, this aircraft falls under microlight aviation rules. And those rules are designed with one goal in mind: make flying more accessible, less complicated, less intimidating. And that changes everything. Because instead of going through the long, demanding process of a full private pilot license, you can legally fly something like this with roughly 31 hours of training. That's it. No years of commitment, no overwhelming barriers to entry. Now compare that to traditional aviation for a second. Most pilots spend significantly more time just to qualify. More training, more regulations, more restrictions. And here, you've got an aircraft that looks and performs like something far more advanced, sitting behind a much lower entry point. It almost feels like a loophole. But it's not. It's the system working exactly as it was designed, just applied to something no one expected to fit into it. And just when you think that's already pushing the limits, there's another rule. That makes this even more surprising. And that's the part that really changes who gets to fly. Now hold on, because this is where things shift in a big way. Even if you accept the lower training requirements, you'd still expect one major barrier to remain: the medical checks. Aviation has always been strict about that. If you can't pass the medical, you don't fly. Simple as that. But here, that rule bends. Instead of going through complex aviation medical exams, pilots can use something much simpler: a self-declared medical. And the idea behind it is almost unbelievable at first. If you're fit enough to drive a car, you're considered fit enough to fly this aircraft. Yeah, that one rule alone changes everything. Because suddenly, flying isn't just limited to those who can pass strict medical evaluations. It opens the door for people who thought their flying days were over. Experienced pilots who lost their certifications now have a way back into the sky. And this is where it gets even bigger. Because this isn't just about one country. In the United States, upcoming regulations, like MOSAIC, could potentially allow aircraft like this to be flown under even more accessible licenses. And if that happens, the entire market shifts. Now imagine that for a second. An aircraft with fighter-like looks, serious performance, and almost no traditional barriers to entry. So now you've got speed, design, and accessibility all in one place. But that raises a new question. Where did this aircraft actually come from? And what does it feel like in real life? Because that's where things get even more interesting. And this is where the story stops being theoretical and becomes real. Because now we're not just talking about specs or rules anymore. We're standing at an actual airfield in the UK, Little Snoring Airfield. Quiet, but alive. The kind of place where you hear aircraft before you see them. Where everything feels calm until something powerful moves. And sitting there is the shark. Not on a screen, not in photos, right in front of you. And somehow, it looks even more unreal in person. Smaller than you'd expect, but sharper, tighter, like every inch of it was designed with purpose. Nothing wasted, nothing soft. Then you notice the registration. A small detail, but it matters. It's named after the mako shark, one of the fastest predators in the ocean. And suddenly, the name doesn't feel like marketing anymore. It feels accurate. And this is where another piece of the story comes in. The pilot, Stuart Hudson. Not just a pilot, but an engineer. Someone who understands this machine from the inside out, which makes this moment feel different, more grounded, more real. Because now, this isn't just hype. It's about to be tested. And up close, things get even more interesting. Because the big question still hasn't been answered. Does it actually feel as impressive in person as it sounds? Now here's where things start to make sense. And at the same time, even less sense. Because beneath that sleek fighter jet look, this aircraft isn't relying on brute power at all. It's built differently. Carbon fiber, glass fiber, incredibly light, but still strong. And in aviation, that changes everything. Less weight means more speed, more efficiency, better control. Then you notice the wings. Not straight, not basic. Elliptical, designed to cut through the air with minimal drag. Add retractable landing gear, and suddenly, it reduces resistance even more mid-flight, It's like every single part is working together to squeeze out performance. So naturally, you expect a powerful engine behind all this. But that's where it flips again, because instead, it's running just 100 horsepower. Yeah, that's it. And somehow, it still delivers insane range and efficiency. Around 12 liters per hour, over 11 hours in the air, more than 1,600 kilometers of range. Not because it's powerful, but because it's optimized. Every system, every component, working in sync. And then, you step inside. And this is where it really hits you. Tandem seating, fighter-style canopy, a cockpit wrapped in Kevlar like a protective shell, glass displays, autopilot, full avionics. It doesn't feel like an ultralight anymore. It feels like something far more serious. And for a moment, everything feels perfect. Until you realize, none of this matters unless it actually flies the way it promises. And then, it's time. The engine starts, smooth, controlled, no drama. The aircraft begins to taxi, and even here it feels stable. Almost too stable for something this light. The suspension absorbs bumps easily. Everything feels composed. But that calm doesn't last long. Because the moment it lines up on the runway, things change. Acceleration kicks in fast, faster than you expect. Within seconds, the nose lifts, and before you fully process it, you're already airborne. No struggle, no hesitation, just a smooth, clean lift. And here's the crazy part. The runway is only about 400 meters long, yet it leaves the ground like it has no business being there. Gear retracts, flaps come up, and suddenly, you're climbing, quickly, confidently, like this is exactly what it was built to do, and for a moment, it feels almost too easy. But the real story hasn't even started yet, because once it reaches altitude, everything changes again. Now this is where it gets addictive. At altitude, the aircraft settles into cruise mode, around 144 knots, and that's not even full power, just 75%, which already tells you something. There's more performance left if you want it. And then comes the moment most people wait for. Control. The side stick feels different at first. Short movements, precise inputs, but once you adjust, it feels incredibly responsive. Almost like the aircraft is reading your intentions before you fully make them. Turns feel smooth, balanced, stable. You're not fighting the aircraft, you're working with it. And then comes the part that changes your perception completely. A low pass, around 150 knots, just 200 feet above the ground. And suddenly, that speed feels completely different. What felt controlled at altitude now feels insanely fast. Everything rushes past. The ground feels closer. The margin feels thinner. And for a second, you realize just how capable this thing really is. But speed isn't everything. Because now another question starts creeping in. How safe is something like this? And this is where the aircraft shows a completely different side of itself. Because behind all that speed and performance, there's a layer of thoughtfulness that most people don't expect. Small details, but they make a huge difference. Take the ballast system. Instead of fixing weight in one position, it can actually be moved depending on how the aircraft is flown. 2 people on board? Adjust forward, flying solo? Shift it back. It keeps the balance exactly where it needs to be. Simple idea, but incredibly effective. And then there's the big one, the ballistic parachute system. In an emergency, it can deploy and bring the entire aircraft down safely. Not just the pilot, the whole aircraft. And unlike most systems, this one deploys forward, from the nose. And here's something even more surprising. In some cases, the aircraft can actually be repaired and flown again after deployment. That's rare. So with all this technology, you start wondering something else. What does something like this actually cost? And this is where reality kicks back in. Because for everything this aircraft offers, it doesn't come cheap. A fully equipped version sits around 261,000 euros, which pushes close to $300,000 depending on configuration. At first, that sounds like a lot, especially for something classified as an ultralight. But then you start looking at what you're actually getting. Advanced avionics, dual controls, safety systems, performance that rivals much larger aircraft, and suddenly, the price starts to make more sense. Still, it's not just about money. There's also time. Demand is growing, which means wait times can stretch for months before you even get your hands on one. And yet, people are still lining up. Which raises another question. Who exactly is buying this? Because the answer isn't what you'd expect. And this is where the story becomes more personal. Because the people drawn to this aircraft aren't all the same. Some are experienced pilots who thought their flying days were over due to medical restrictions. And now, they've found a way back. Others are enthusiasts, people chasing that feeling, that speed, that connection to flying that feels raw and exciting again. And then there are those who already own aircraft, but want something different, something fun, something that reminds them why they started flying in the first place. And that's where this aircraft fits perfectly, because it sits in a space that didn't really exist before. High performance, but accessible. Advanced, but not overwhelming. And as technology improves and regulations evolve, more aircraft like this are starting to appear. But even with growing competition, this one still stands out. And that's why this aircraft matters. Because it might not just be a trend. It could be a glimpse into the future of aviation. And when you really think about it, this shouldn't work. A fighter jet-inspired aircraft with this level of performance, being this accessible, it feels impossible. But it's real, and it's legal. So now I've got to ask you, would you fly it?